This chapter focuses almost entirely on Rock Lee and just the description of this super technique and move that he has called the Lotus.
Naruto number 52, The Principles of Use.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and action-packed, eyebrow-ridden tale of Naruto. Our last chapter saw us with, of course, things looking not very good for Sakura, as she was, obviously they came upon her, the Dosu and Zaku, I think was their name, and I don't know who the third one is. I don't think they've introduced them yet. The three ninjas from the Sound Village, from the Village of Sound. And right at the end of the chapter, Rock Lee came in using this cool hurricane technique and jumped in front of her and was like, boom, and here to save the day, right? So that's how the chapter left off, and of course that's right where the chapter picks up. And actually, the chapter takes place primarily just in the midst of this fight, in what's going on here, with him trying to obviously defend her and the unconscious Naruto, and the unconscious and writhing in pain Sasuke from the Orochimaru bite. So it starts out and there's some back and forth, there's some fighting and what have you. Really, at the end of the day, what it winds up being is they go and they send, I think Dosu is the one, the kind of weird-looking hunchback one that's got the bandages over half of his face or whatever. Cool character design, but definitely odd. And him and Rock Lee are obviously are going at it, and fighting and what have you. And winds up taking us away from the action, though, for a quick minute, just to kind of check in on on Rock Lee's other teammates, and the other two that are in his cell. And they haven't really been formally introduced yet, but now they're starting to they're going to go look for him, is really the whole point of this page or two that they do, because he's been gone for a while, and apparently he's very punctual, and it's not like him to not be there, so they're thinking maybe he ran into some trouble. And then they're like, well, nah, but he's pretty strong and can take care of himself, but we better go look for him anyway, so they kind of go and disappear, So, nonetheless, that's really the only thing that kind of takes us a little bit away from the action, I guess you would say. But when we come back to the action, really the whole point of this chapter is showing Rock Lee and him. Sakura doesn't even know who the hell he is at first, and then he goes and he's like, no, but I swore to defend you, because at first she's like, well, thank you for helping me, like, stranger. She doesn't even recognize him, right? And she's been through a lot, though, and she didn't think much of him to begin with when he, asked her out and everything else, and then challenged Sasuke to a fight, and, whatever that was, 10, 15 chapters ago. But anyway, he goes and he's like, oh yeah, I told you I'd always be there for you, as I pledged my eternal love or whatever. And she's just like, oh God. And you can just see that her eyes are like rolling up into her head as she's thinking about, like just having that little flashback and seeing him like putting two and two together who he is. And she's just like, oh God. So anyway, she's still grateful, obviously, that he's there to help. And he's thinking in his mind, he's like, listen, if I wind up fighting them one at a time, I'm outnumbered 3-1, even though I'm very strong, And towards the beginning of the chapter, he does this cool move where he just, like, goes and slams his fist into the ground, man, and just winds up jacking this dude up, And the guy kind of goes flying back, kind of has to jump to avoid the technique, as well as one of Sakura's kunai that she throws. But really what it is it boils down to is that he's still outnumbered 3-1. So really doesn't matter, because they're fairly probably on the same level, I would guess, and even if he is stronger than them, it's very difficult, trust me, to ever try to fight more than one person. So it usually doesn't end well, even in fictional stories. So very rarely, can you fight them, unless it's just like some fodder characters, and there's 10 or 20 of them, and you got a character that's running by and hitting them and knocking them out of the way, But these characters they're pretty formidable. They have some techniques of their own. But really what winds up happening is that Lee goes into this flashback where his master, Guy, is teaching him, teaching their whole cell, I guess, the Lotus technique. And so then, anyway, Lee is the only one who actually gets it, right? And then you just saw this huge, like, tree log, like, split in half or what have you. And he's, like, all happy. He's like, I got it, I did it, So eventually Guy has to go and slap him upside the head to get his attention. And then he's like, listen, you need to learn, now that you've mastered this technique or you've learned how to use it, we're going to put it in the forbidden technique category. And then it goes into this really cool, at least very cool to me, explanation of how you only use, because all his stuff is based on physical stuff, taijutsu, obviously. And he says, the brain, it basically has like a fail-safe in there. You only use approximately 20% of your muscle strength. And the cool thing about that is that a lot of that is actually rooted in like reality and real scientific stuff. I mean, you've seen things before where like a mother, a 130-pound mother, right, a frail, skinny woman, her kid is trapped under a car or some kind of super heavy object, and she's able to like just summon this superhuman strength for the few seconds she needs to save him. And you know, it's one of those things where your brain, and they explain it like this: your brain has like a safety mechanism, like a fail-safe. You don't want to push your muscles too hard, because if you go past that threshold of where it's at about the 20%, and I don't know in reality how much it actually is, but I know that you can push your muscles past where your brain thinks you can push them, right? It's something that they actually teach you and train and just kind of just beat over your head, so to speak, in the martial arts, you know, is that, and that's how Bruce Lee became how he was, you know, and I know that this Rock Lee, from what everyone has told me, is also, you know, is kind of modeled after Bruce Lee, and that's cool because I have nothing but respect for Bruce. Very, very cool. I mean, unfortunately died way too young, but I mean, this was a guy who was just absolutely, he was 200% better than everybody else, head and shoulders, you know what I mean, above everybody else. He made up his own style. That's how good he was. But anyway, enough about Bruce Lee. So Rock Lee learns this technique, learns that it's forbidden, and the whole explanation is because you can wind up killing yourself, you can wind up fatiguing and then eventually killing yourself if you exhaust and push your muscles too hard, too far, too fast. So what you have to do is you really have to go and train your brain. Now he has to train his brain now that to only use this in certain circumstances, because what it does is it actually takes up some of your life force when you use it. You know, that's how he explains it. So I don't know if that's supposed to be like, you know, part of your life force is drained away. You can only do it so many times before you die. I just liked the explanation, is what I really enjoyed how it was described. So he comes out of the flashback and he's going to use this technique, this front lotus technique, and he's going to use it on that guy, Dosu, and the bandage man. He's going to use it on him and whatnot to take him out. And then he goes and he says, because his master told him, you know, guy in the flashback told him it can only be used under certain circumstances. And he says, I think this qualifies because this is to save somebody's life and it's for someone that I care deeply about, like kind of like for the one I love. So I think it was one of those where you can use the technique, but only if someone's life is in danger that you care for, or something along those lines. You know, something where you wouldn't run into the situation every day, and something that could, you know, kind of have him train his brain to be like, this is only a last, you know, this is a last-ditch effort type of thing, you know. So anyway, he goes and pulls this technique out, and it looks cool, man. I mean, the drawings in here, the art, I should say, the drawings, the art is fantastic, you know. And as he goes and locks up with him, first he goes and he like disappears, reappears, and just goes and jacks him up in the face, man. Just kicks him right in the face. And then he goes and he grabs onto him, and he goes and fires himself up in the air, and then does this forward lotus technique, right? And I know it just looks like a blur and whatnot, but as you saw everything leading up to that, you can picture him jumping in the air, or being in the air, spinning, and then doing like this spinning pile driver move to him, right? But right at the last second, his buddy over here, one of the other Sound Village ninjas or whatever, Zaku I think his name is, goes and actually sees what's going on, and he's like, oh man, shit, I better help him, right? So he winds up going and using this technique where it makes the ground real soft, I guess, or maybe it's like a teleportation thing where it makes it soft, because he basically goes in, and at first I was like, all right, it looks like he's still got his head jammed into the ground, but next thing you know, he's up, he's out of the ground, and he comes over, he's by them, and he's like, man. And he even gets up, and Dosu even gets up, and he's like, damn, what a crazy strong technique that was, because yeah, even though I landed on like soft soil or whatever you don't want to be, because I think he just like softened the ground up. Even though I landed on like this soft bed of like almost like equivalent to a pillow, I still took the brunt, like I still hurt. Imagine if I actually got slammed right into the ground. I mean, he'd be no more. It would have killed him. So at least that's how I took it. But anyway, then we go and this dude's gonna go and he's gonna pull his magical technique out, and he's gonna go and fight fight against Rock. The problem with Rock doing that is that he's like, man, I'm all tapped out. I exhausted my energy, so I'm assuming he exhausted his chakra, at least for the time being, by using that Lotus technique. But very cool stuff, and really the whole chapter centered around that, the explanation of it, the backdrop, the as far as the flashback and everything else. The only thing we can hope for here, at least from what I can see, is hoping that his teammates wind up coming to find him and then kind of joining in the fight and maybe being able to chase off these Sound Village ninjas. Because, like I said, Naruto and Sasuke have been out now for a few chapters, and it's kind of neat to see. It's neat when you go and you take those main characters, those kind of strong warrior tanks, whatever, and you go and you incapacitate them, and then go and kind of, you know, so you bring somebody else to the front, and it allows some other characters to have the spotlight, you know, because so many have been introduced in these Chunin exams so far, and it's now letting some of them come into the spotlight and get a little bit of screen time. So I definitely liked it. Chapter ends right there. Shit's about to hit the fan with them. Rock is tapped out, and obviously, you know, all three of the, you know, the whole cell from the Village of Sound is still intact and looking good. You know, they got their strength and they've got their chakra, so, and it's not looking good. Let me know, though, my chapter question for you, though, brothers and sisters, is what are your thoughts on the Forward Lotus Technique, its application, its uses, as well as the descriptive nature that Kishimoto put into this, as far as explaining about only, you know, using 20% of your muscles and being able to kind of turn off that failsafe and push and be able to get more out of it, you know. What are your thoughts on that? Let me know your answer to that question in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation.
Remember to follow me on my other channel, as well as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as well.